the company that brought us games like Baldur's Gate, the Mass Effect series, as well as the first two Dragon Age games, comes this third installment in the series, Dragon Age Inquisition. So after the game starts and you finish selecting your gender and race out of the 4 available races, the humans, elves, dwarves and the Kunari, and your class, be that a warrior, a rogue or a mage, as well as having the option to go through a rather simplest yet satisfying character customization process, there is a brief cutscene that raises more questions than answers. And you are thrown into the game world. As your journey begins, all you will know about the plot is that the explosion you have seen in the main menu has not only killed quite a few relevant characters, but has also torn a massive hole into the sky, an actual breach between the world of mortals and the realm of spirits, through which demons keep coming. In the beginning it is still unclear as to who you are and what role you had to play in all of this. The only thing that is certain is that you were definitely involved, not just because you were the only survivor of the explosion, but also because of this strange mark that your character has on its hand, which is somehow connected to this breach. Now, the first thing that captured my attention while playing Dragon Age Inquisition were the graphics. Right from the start I was amazed not just by the obvious jaw-dropping sceneries, but also by the more subtle things. The attention to details, the lighting and reflections, the color hues which help illustrate a borderline realistic art style, the exceedingly rich environment, but most importantly, as I was progressing through the game, I was pleased to see that all of these things were not just the first impression. On the contrary, I found myself constantly impressed by the game's beauty and diversity right up till the very end. From lush green forests teeming with wildlife to dry desert sands where you actually see the clouds casting a shadow on the ground as they pass by, from abandoned old ruins filled with demons to underground caves overrun by darkspawn, to mysterious castles and forgotten monuments, even the ocean from the coastal region seems to have a certain weight and depth. And of course, in true RPG fashion, no scenery is complete without a cold, snow-filled area. And just when you think you've seen it all, you will stumble upon a mini dungeon that will make your jaw drop. And these were just a few samples of what you will encounter while exploring the world of Dragon Age Inquisition. I was also pleased to see that despite the really outstanding graphics, the game performs really well even on an older PC. I don't think my framerate has ever gone under 58 FPS while playing the game on maximum settings, so I can say for sure that the game is definitely well optimized. Now, as I was getting drawn more and more into the game world, I noticed that a big part of the immersion process is owed to the soundtrack and ambient noises. For you see, regardless of how pretty it is, it's not really a waterfall until it sounds like a waterfall. And it's not just about that, there are certain things you won't notice if they are not there, but when they are, they actually make a really big difference in the overall gaming experience. I'm talking about distant sounds of battle that take me way back to the good old days of Neverwinter Nights. I'm talking about actually stopping to hear the rest of that song. Talking about making me almost sit at the edge of my seat while exploring dark and mysterious environments. It's something beyond proper voice acting. You can see yourself entering a dungeon, or you can hear yourself, you can feel yourself entering a dungeon.
It is called Veilfire. It is a form of sympathetic magic, a memory of flame that burns in this world where the veil is thin.
I want my pulse to rise as I see a dragon on the horizon and the epic battle music starts playing.
Today is a good day. Today is a very good day.
But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Suffice to say that they have created this beautiful, diverse, jaw-dropping gaming environment, and also I'm extremely pleased to see they have taken the time to really work on the more subtle details, which, like I said, you wouldn't miss them if they are not there, but from my point of view at least, they are a requirement if you want to make a game in which a player can fully immerse himself and have him hooked from start to finish. Mind you, that's not an easy thing to do, especially in a game of this size. I mean, the map is huge. No, not this puny map with dozens of quest markers on it. This general map, where you will eventually discover that you have 12 areas to unlock and play through. You will also be pleased to find out that despite the game's size, it's actually really packed. Every few steps you'll find something new to discover, either a puzzle or a new quest, or a rift to close, demons to kill, chests to open, you name it. There is never a dull moment, and it doesn't get boring either.
Who placed a skull out here? And for what
It actually made me want to explore every little nook and corner because I was always satisfied of whatever I
Skull
found.
illuminates certain objects in the distance. I am not familiar with such magic.
Of course, it had to be a skull that lights up creepy shit.
And it's really rare to see a game that encourages and rewards exploration on such a scale. Now, even though the game is not technically an open world RPG, it's more instance based, since the 12 major areas are not connected to each other. There's also this unique design choice of not having passive health regeneration while outside of combat. You have to resupply at a nearby camp,
Make a good place to camp.
which I totally like, by the way. Makes sense, and it gives you this feeling of progression. And it also generates the need to make strategic decisions combat-wise, but more about that later. Suffice to say, it's a very interesting way to have a checkpoint, so to speak. So like I said, the game is not an open world RPG, but you will still get to benefit from the open world experience. Wait, what? Hold on. Let me explain. The game is definitely not linear. There will be a lot of encounters, especially early on, that you will have to avoid entirely and come back at a later date when you are stronger, especially if you're playing the game on hard. Or, and this really strengthens the whole open world play however you want ideology, you can spend more time fighting the stronger opponents in the beginning if you are looking for a worthy challenge, and have an easier time in other locations. But not always. That's what I found really fascinating about Dragon Age Inquisition. I noticed that only around 60% of the areas in the game tend to scale up. The regions that are tied to important parts in the story tend to stay unchanged difficulty-wise. So in conclusion, you actually get to play the way you want and still be rewarded for your extra effort, but at the same time the game will continue to provide challenges all the way up to the very end. It's all because of this unique scaling that they have in Dragon Age Inquisition. There are also entire areas within the 12 maps which are unavailable right away, and you have to unlock them from the War Room General map, which will be available to you inside your very own castle. Yes, you get your own castle. Rather close to the beginning of the game actually, just as the Inquisition starts to take shape. Now, this place is also huge. I think I spent a good 50 to 20 minutes exploring this place. This place is so big that you actually have fast travel to get you from one place to another inside your own castle. There have been many RPGs throughout history that you have your own castle or keep or base of operation or whatever, but I have yet to see a game that invests as much into this aspect as Dragon Age Inquisition. I mean, you even have a fucking garden. And you get to plant plants, and you can harvest them later to make potions out of them. Really. And the fact that when you decide to settle in, it's more of a ruin than an actual castle, and you get to upgrade and customize it the way you want as your Inquisition grows, makes the entire experience that much sweeter. I soon found myself becoming really familiar and fond of this place. I mean, it has everything you need. You have your very own forge with a blacksmith and an enchanter where you have access to the game's crafting system, which by the way is quite satisfying. You can actually make endgame items just from crafting if that is your wish. You have vendors in the courtyard, you have your very own stable. This is also the meeting place of all of your allies that you gather throughout your journey. This is the place from which you will render judgment upon your enemies.
He could go in that... what's it called? A gibbet? Chief Mofran. You'll be placed in a gibbet to serve as an example to... someone. Then, probably released.
Gibbet? Gibbet? Gibbet?
It's actually quite an interesting and rather unique mechanic added to the game, especially since every decision you make will have multiple consequences. Not only does it influence the approval or disapproval rate of your allies, but it may also yield you new benefits for your Inquisition, or have unforeseen negative side effects. So you see, it's not just about doing quests and killing monsters, gradually progressing towards a point where your character becomes almighty. No, the game has done an amazing job at allowing the player to also experience what comes after you've become this all-powerful general. It's an extra layer in the RPG experience, if you will. It's about forging alliances, it's about acquiring new assets and growing your Inquisition's influence and power, so that ultimately you will be able to accomplish a lot of things that normally you shouldn't be able to do on your own. And it makes perfect sense. No matter how strong you are, you can't actually fight a missing bridge. No, you bring in your troops to rebuild the bridge for you, so you can gain access to areas that were previously inaccessible.
We have to turn back. Someone at Skyhold will have a solution.
You also can't actually be in all places at once. That's why you have your war council, by which you are able to dispatch your troops or diplomats or spies and assassins, and of course they will never come back empty-handed from an expedition. Dragon Age Inquisition has done an excellent job at showing the player what it means to be a leader. Another thing I wanted to talk about are the dragon fights. I remember the first time I walked into this destroyed area and I thought, what the hell happened here? Suddenly I heard the unmistakable sound of the dragon's roar. I felt the adrenaline started to kick in as I was preparing to charge forward while screaming like a mad dog on the inside. A few seconds later, a single fireball killed my entire team, and I admit, I panicked. I had to come back to this fight quite a few times before I was finally able to bring him down. So you see, besides the actual dragon encounter, another thing that I really enjoyed was the way it was all set up. You could be minding your own business, exploring the coastal regions, occasionally stopping to look at the view, and then you stumble upon...
Seeker, you're the dragon expert. What do we do now?
Don't get killed by either of them.
And of course, one does not simply stay idle and watch. Of course, you have to go in and poke them to see what happens. Sometimes you obtain dragon bait at the end of a chain of side quests and you use it to lure a dragon out in the open. Other times he is waiting for you in a valley to which you gain access to by completing a puzzle. I really love the fact that just getting to the dragon was always an interesting or unexpected scenario. Now, each dragon has one or two different abilities or acts a bit differently every time, but to be honest, I expected as you progress further into the game, dragon abilities to be a little bit more complex and diverse from a mechanical point of view. Still, I had to blast every single dragon encounter. There is just something so satisfying about coming back to a dragon that put you to shame in the first place and just staring him down. And here's the thing, even though by the end you get to totally demolish dragons, sometimes they will still have one last card left to play. and you may find this weird, but I enjoyed the fact that it killed us. I was OP, yet the fight still presented a challenge which did not reduce my OP status whatsoever. On a side note here, in addition to what I said earlier about more complex and diverse mechanics during dragon fights, you guys see how they could easily have taken this even further just by adding within the fight, let's say 3 or 4 more dynamic events that could be either fatal to the player regardless of how strong he is, or could significantly speed up the killing process, or maybe get your Inquisition troops involved, bring some siege weaponry, you know, something that has never been done before. Ever. But anyway, as it stands, these fights, combined with the way the map scales, really bring out the notion of play however you want and you will still be rewarded. You will still feel satisfied. So with that being said, I can honestly say that Dragon Age Inquisition has some of the best dragon fights I have ever seen. Going to take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about the game's combat system. You may feel that there isn't enough skill diversity, but that's not actually true. Besides the fact new skill paths get unlocked later on in the game, you have 4 characters to play with, so you have access to 4 different hotbars at any given time. And since each skill is very specific to its task, making each class really stand out in its respective role, I found myself not taking the same party composition with me each time. I actually wanted to experience the entire spectrum of diversity that the build system had to offer. Adding to this is the fact that there is no level cap. By the end of the game, I was actually about level 25-26, which allowed me to go into more than 2 skill paths. So resetting your traits to re-optimize your build and play around with different variations and party composition was awesome. And also, I noticed that despite not having a level cap, the build system was actually surprisingly balanced. I know these things matter for hardcore RPG fans, we all have our preferences, but if our class of choice is a lot weaker than the other classes, you'll feel somewhat cheated. It's just not the same. Well, you will be pleased to find out that this will not be a problem in Dragon Age Inquisition. So I kept talking about play the way you want and experience what it means to be a leader. This is also the case when it comes to the lore and story in the game. Even though after you find out who the main antagonist is and the mystery is gone, it becomes a classic good versus evil in an epic final battle, the villain's intentions and more importantly the events leading up to that point are not entirely standard. The explosion from the beginning of the game has not only left a hole in the sky, but has also left one in the natural order of things within the game world. Left without leadership, the Chantry, which is responsible for the spiritual guidance in the game world, is crumbling, leaving the Templar Order without a clear objective, and since the breach is causing smaller rifts to appear all over the place, making the mages more vulnerable to demonic possession than ever before, it wasn't long before all bets were off and the entire game world succumbed to chaos.
Look at this. The apostates have gone mad with power.
I see just as many Templars.
I really enjoy to see a logical, well-written plot that explores in great detail the consequences of such chaos from many different angles. From political intrigue at the royal court filled with rivalry, gossip, and the occasional assassination attempts that leave a trail of corpses in the kitchen, to Templar fanatic zealotry, to an unstable mage rebellion, even the Grey Wardens get pulled into this conflict. So in true RPG fashion, the game is giving you multiple instances where you have to decide who lives and who dies, who do you want fighting at your side, and what price are you willing to pay. And it's never a clear black and white decision. There are multiple instances where I would just pause for a moment and think, what should I choose here? There are no multiple endings to this game, but the journey up to the end is sort of a moral decision roller coaster. So the bottom line is, the story may not have been mind-blowing, something that doesn't even remotely resemble anything we've seen so far, but the way it was all put together, the delivery was very satisfying.
Let him go and I swear you'll get what you want.
I want the world back.
No. No!
Now, what glued everything I said so far together, in my opinion, are the actual characters. BioWare has invested a lot of effort into making each relevant character have a unique personality, and in the case of your party members, your inner circle, they also come with a significant background story. Now, the reason I say this is my favorite part of the game, besides proper voice acting with different accents and above average lip syncing,
Don't touch me, Mother. Their magic is...
Turn to noble purpose. Their magic is surely no more evil than your blade.
not using the same voice actor twice, and also the depth of their speech.
Don't you understand? I gave the order to kill Lord Callier, his entourage, and I lied to my men about what they were doing. When it came to light, I ran.
You know, it's funny when you have better voice acting in games than in Hollywood movies. Anyway, besides all of that, what I liked the most was the way I was drawn into their story. It started with the little things, like a random conversation between two party members as you were exploring through the world map.
You're afraid. You don't have to be.
My dear Inquisitor, please restrain your pet demon. I do not want it addressing me.
It never felt like filler content. It was always very unique.
When mages were afraid, their pain called me, and I set them free.
You helped mages escape?
I killed them so the Templars couldn't hurt them anymore.
Of course. I should have guessed a demon's help would end in blood.
It was wrong. I'm sorry.
Cole, you were the ghost of the spire.
Yes?
Your murders stirred the circle into a frenzy. That was what brought the attention of the Templars.
The Templars hurt mages.
Stupid, panicking mages who became a danger to themselves and others because of you. You brought matters in the spire to a head. Without you, there would be no rebellion. Countless deaths are on your head, demon. Are you satisfied with the result of your protection?
So of course eventually I was curious to see if I can find out more about the topic. So every time I was in the vicinity I would engage in some conversation with the members of the inner circle. Here's the thing. Every time I came back after, I was always thinking that they can possibly have even more to tell me. But to my surprise, they always did. In fact, their story wasn't getting smaller every time I visited. On the contrary, it was expanding, gradually adding more depth to the character until you reach a certain point where you actually feel like you know them. And that, my friends, is one of the things which separates the just another RPG from the this was truly an amazing RPG. It's never just about mechanical progression. When I have before me characters that are so complex and well defined that one could even go so far as to make a psychoanalysis on them.
A broken body, bloody, banged on the stone cell, guts gripping in the dark, dank. A captured apostate. They threw him into the dungeon in the spire at Val Royo.
I will of course find myself strangely attracted to not always make decisions that I know my inner circle will approve of in crucial situations. The game does an amazing job in setting up an environment in which you actually want to see what would happen if. Coming back to what I previously said about experiencing what comes after you become all powerful, you'll have the opportunity to use the resources of your Inquisition in a more selfish way, to do favors for your inner circle, side quest after side quest until you will eventually reach a major turning point, the grand finale. This will also be the way you will get to experience the game's romance. Unlike the previous Dragon Age games, you don't just buy a mountain of gifts so that you eventually get to see some erotic scenes. It's not about pixel on pixel action, this is not hentai. No, it's about two characters gradually becoming closer to each other based on the player's decision. It's about experiencing a love story in the making. And you do have quite a few characters to choose from. There's something in there for everyone.
I will never hurt you without your permission. You will always be safe. If you're ever uncomfortable, if you ever want me to stop, you say Kato, and it's over. No questions asked.
The world may want my time, Josephine, but you have my heart.
Then I count myself happy.
So thus, the journey towards the end is just as important as the ending. And when you reach that point, you will look back and realize this was a complete love story. Now that is proper romance. And to think that all of this is entirely optional. So in conclusion, the game's biggest strength is its ability to continuously surprise me with its graphics, music, the occasional horror story houses, dragons in weird locations. Something to keep me hooked from start to finish. Now, let's talk about the bad parts. Besides the bugs, like not being able to switch character, the occasional instant game crashes, you have, as always, even if it's just a little bit stupid AI, you might just be unlocking a burning house while your main character is sitting in a fire and dying for absolutely no fucking reason. There are also a lot of things that are not exactly bad, but they could have been improved upon. Like tactical mode, for example. You should have been able to zoom out a lot more than you can now. The main quest storyline could have been a lot more complex, but I actually believe the reason it's not has to do more with marketing than a lack of inspiration. Mob diversity was also lacking, and I already spoke about improving the dragon fights. And why are mage armors always so goddamn ugly? But it doesn't matter, I could overlook all of these problems except for one. And this is also something that cannot be fixed with a patch. There is nothing more immersion breaking than the actual breaking of immersion. Especially in mid-game, if you're a completionist like me, you'll end up spending more time in loading screens than actually playing the game. It's like
the way the ground shook when it landed. The smell of the fires burning.
Oh, yeah. And they know they fucked up with the loading screens. That's why they have so much lore for you to read while you're waiting for eternity. And by the way, they should have put a press any key to continue, so at least you get to finish reading if you started. I genuinely think all the immersion breaking you get from all these high and frequent loading times is the reason why the game lacks an overall sense of feeling. A flavor, if you will. You know, like those games you remember for many, many years to come. So this is why my final verdict of the game is Dragon Age Inquisition is an extremely enjoyable yet forgettable gaming experience. A flawed masterpiece.